Hi, I'm Bill Ritchie, and I'm making a video for a family in Southern California who ordered this press, Mini Etching Press, for a project, a family project covering 3 generations. Grandmother, who's 99 years old, son, who's 70, and granddaughter, who's somewhere in her maybe middle age. And they sent me the block of the grandmother carved. I wanted 50 different prints for greeting cards, and they're going to reprint them on this press. To do the demonstration, I have laid out here a water-based ink, because I was told that they are going to use water-based ink. This is a Daniel Smith water-soluble ink, but more likely they're probably going to use the Speedball inks, and I don't have any. Palette knife, a brayer, an ink slab, which is a piece of glass taped to a hardboard, water, of course, a few rags handy, and another piece of toweling, because I'm going to dampen some of these papers. I have 3 sheets of a fine art printing paper, heavier than most ordinary. This is throwaway newsprint. And for fun, I've decided I would try some blotter paper for a blind emboss. It's called a blind emboss. And of course, the block that the family sent to me, and the etching press. I have also a piece of fabric, felt. The etching press comes with the etching blankets, because the press was essentially designed for printing intaglio, or etchings, engravings, that kind of thing. And of course, that requires those blankets. But I have this small piece of felt just for embossing. So I'll get started with the damping process. Not much to it, really. The towel is just to keep the my counter from being all wet. A blotter paper is not regarded as a fine art printing paper, but it's soft and makes a good blind emboss. It's best if it's damp. It can be done dry. To dampen it, I have the spray bottle, and give it a few sprays, light sprays. And stack them up. I might only use one of these, but the more papers you have with this light damping, and given some time, which can be anywhere from an hour to several hours, add in a plastic bag and put under weight during those minutes or hours. The water will gradually flow out. Now this is the fine printing paper, and I think it's a French rag paper. It definitely must be dampened. Now, I believe the family may or may not be using damp paper or fine papers, maybe a dry sketch pad paper or something like that. And so I'll keep 2 of these out as dry paper to give an example as to the difference it makes when you dampen paper and when you print dry. The newsprint I will just leave dry because, as I said, it's a throwaway paper and it's just made for, fine tuning. I'm going to put the fine paper with the blotter paper and put the whole thing under a weight. Now the weight can be a stack of books. Of course, I have a plastic bag so that it won't get wet on the books. But this is a melamine board, so that makes a good weight. Just sit under there for, I don't know, a half hour, an hour, and it'll be ready to go. As I said, the press was designed for intaglio printing. And intaglio printing is a high-pressure process. It uses these pressure screws to adjust the pressure. The same goes for relief printing, which is, of course, the linoleum block. And for the linoleum block, that's called a type high block, which means that it's in thickness, it's the height of type as used in letterpress. And so I made a chase that was a type high chase. This is made of actual block-mounted linoleum block material cut down so that it fits into the press bed like this. So this is part of setting up the press. The block itself is small, sits inside, and in order to keep it from shifting around when you're working with it, we use little blocks. I can't remember what they're called, but they're little blocks to kind of hold it in place, like so. And as I said, I plan to do a blind emboss, so then the felt will come. The press is a geared bed. The Mini Etching Press is a geared bed press, and which makes it nice because when you're setting up the pressure or printing with it, the bed moves without the pressure of the top roller. So now I feel like the press is set up well enough to proceed to the testing. Okay, now we've set up the basics on the press. Let's see how it does to make a blind emboss, that is, an embossed print without any ink. My paper, the blotter paper I prepared earlier, should be damp enough now just to slightly soften it. It doesn't have to be dripping wet, just slightly soft. Just kind of cold to the touch. The paper goes first, of course. And then the felt blanket. You can feel the resistance on the press when it comes to the printing block because it's just a little bit higher than the chase. And when it gets to the other end, of course, it's going to you'll feel the resistance let off. There. I shouldn't run it back through again. It's tempting, but it's better to see it from the other side. If you go through twice, it might blur the sharpness of the image. I'll just run it all the way out. And you can see from the embossing that's coming through that I have some results. And that completes the press setup. We've made our blind emboss. Time to get the ink ready. I'm using Daniel Smith water-based ink. It's black in this case. I have a palette knife, which otherwise known as a putty knife, and a brayer. Cap off the ink tube. Roll out just a little bit to get started. Smoosh it around a bit. And begin with the brayer. You roll 90 degrees each time to get the ink distributed evenly. And there's a kind of a little spinning goes on too when you're inking it up so that it's not just going over and over itself in the same pattern, but distributing the ink evenly. Now I like to start out with an ample amount and then reduce it back down to a minimal amount. And I like to build up from there until I get the right density, which is what what are called the trial proofs are for, to try them out to see if it's working well. So I've reduced the amount of ink. Always going 90 degrees to each stroke, always letting it spin a little if it will. Go back to the minimum amount. that's the amount that I will do on the first trial proof. Now for inking the block. Go very lightly at first. And since I'm only using the minimum amount of ink, I can expect that I'll have to go back and add some more. It's best to build up from a small amount. If you over ink the first trial proofs, then you have to go back and clean the block, and it's a lot of trouble. So it's best to start out with a minimal amount and then work up from there. Now, over here on this corner, it looks like it might be a mistake. It's not. It's the grandmother's initials that she carved into the block. And of course, she had to make them backwards, just like the lettering on the block itself, so that it would not read backwards in the final print. But if you do see some places that are obviously not supposed to be there, you either cut them away, which I won't do because this isn't my block, or clean them up. Ready for the first trial proof. We'll be using a throwaway newsprint. I can tell that there's not enough pressure. I'm going to turn about a half a turn. It still doesn't feel like enough. Oh, that's because I used a felt when I was making the blind emboss. So I'm going to turn it all the way down till I can feel the pressure of the chase itself. That's probably better. But that's what trial proofs are for, and that's why we use throwaway paper. First trial proof. And it looks very good. A little faded right here. Might be maybe my inking wasn't complete. And I'll have to watch that spot because I think it's a little bit low on the block, actually. Maybe it's been damaged because I can see there's a light place running all the way across, so maybe it was damaged. And it's a little bit light right there, but pretty good for a first trial proof. I re-inked the block, and remember, for every time you print, you're going to have to add a little more ink to the slab. I'm going to try this one with dry printing paper. This is fine printing paper. It's a little thicker than throwaway newsprint. And that will account for actually like adding more pressure. But it's just because it's thicker. So this is dry, fine printing paper. Might be the equivalent of what you can buy as printmaking paper in any art supply store. Let's see how it worked with dry, fine printing paper. Pretty sharp. The initials didn't come out very well. I didn't get enough ink on the initials. Maybe we could put those in with a black ink pen. And now for the final part of my demonstration is the fine print paper dampened. This one is just cold to the touch, not very wet. That happens. We'll go ahead. Beautiful. And I got the initials came out. A little blank spot right there, which again you can touch up with a black ink pen. Oh, and one more thing. I didn't mention, the block was actually for white. It was used for white ink, and I only had black ink. And also the cleanup. I'll take this to a washroom and wash it with soap and water. Being careful to be sure that the wood is dried off thoroughly so it doesn't warp. And the slab itself and the palette knife, the roller, they all get washed with soapy water. That's basically it. So now let me see if I can do the intaglio demonstration. You see, the granddaughter, who probably worked with her grandmother in making those Christmas cards, those 50 blocks of printing cards, and now she's a teacher. And I understand from conversations with the family that the press might then go from that project to the school where she's teaching. And for me, that's what I call my perfect storm, because I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, and my goal is to provide these kinds of small printing presses that are for use in families and homeschooling and classrooms and so forth. So I think I'll add on this little bit of intaglio printing demonstration. I said I would demonstrate intaglio printing, and suppose I don't have much time, which is true, and all I have is a Tetra Pak milk carton. Tetra Pak is a product that they use for sealing up everything from liquid beverages to crackers, I guess. And it got popular during the first waves of COVID, when art teachers who teach printmaking couldn't get to their schools. And a few people realized that the material used for Tetra Pak is actually aluminum, and they had been using aluminum material for a substitute for copper, which is the traditional etching process like Rembrandt used. And they realized that if they just scratched on that, they would have what's called a dry point. And I'm not using anything fancy here. It's just a nail that's very sharp. And I will make, a rapid design. Actually, it's looking a little bit like a Picasso. But I'll stop here and ink the plate because I don't have much time. The ink I use will be an etching ink, which is expensive to use, and it's oil-based, and a lot of people don't like it for those two reasons, good reasons. The idea is to rub the ink on so that it gets into the scratches. It's the opposite of relief printing, you see. In the relief print, the ink is coming from the high parts of a plate, and with intaglio, it's coming from the low parts of the plate. The idea is to rub the ink into the low parts of the plate and then wipe it off the high parts. I use telephone pages. Any kind of paper works practically. Doesn't have to be a telephone book. I understand they don't actually make telephone books anymore. I'm going to stop there and print it, even though half of it's really black. But this is creative printmaking. We don't nitpick too much. We'll take the chase off and lower the pressure down. Nice thing about the Mini Etching Press is that it has a chain that connects the two, so it makes sure that the roller stays level. Now, I will put felts down because that's how we print with intaglio. We use felts. And I'll squeeze it all the way down. Squeeze it down tight. And before I started, I dampened some paper, some of that fine printing paper I spoke about earlier. Then the usual method is to put the plate on the bed. get the damp paper that I prepared about an hour ago. I sprayed it with water, but more water than I would have used for dry printing, and put the paper on the plate. I use two hands when I tighten it because that chain is not meant for just using one hand. Tetra plate. I like to actually laminate two pieces of Tetra plate together. Now I'm rolling it back again just for the convenience of the video of the camera. And we have to write a moment number on it because the new method of keeping track of prints is to write the year, which is 23. No, it's 24, isn't it? And 1 and 12. And it's the moment it was printed is 12:10 Pacific Standard Time. And there's the print. So that's the principle of intaglio. You see, it looks simple, but given that you're using damp paper and intaglio ink and the rest of it. But the nice thing is that Tetra Pak is available virtually free because it's in the garbage. Well, that's it. So I've been able to demonstrate the use of the chase for printing relief, the intaglio for printing intaglio, because this is an important project. It's a family project. It spans 3 generations. There will be 50 prints coming out of this press over the coming year. And hopefully during that time, the press itself will be going to a school where kids could be learning how to use presses. And particularly my own interest in that printing is the ancestor of all technologies, which makes it a candidate to the best art course to use for what's called STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. So, thanks for watching. I'm Bill Ritchie in Seattle. Bye-bye.